Well, where you at, New Orleans? And welcome to Dattitude. And this is our live portion of the show. We do this each Friday, 9:15 a.m., although it's 3:15 p.m. where Jeff Duncan is right now. And we're doing it all here on all of our NOLA.com stations, all of our bet.nola.com stations. I am Jim Derry along with Jeff Duncan. Again, we do this every Friday, and we're talking Saints Vikings. Dunk, how you doing this morning? Well, it's afternoon where you are, my friend.
Yeah, 3:15. Look, I'm still adjusting, man. I got up today at like about 10 o'clock. That's extremely late. I mean, in New Orleans, usually I'm
Which
up
is
at
what?
6.
That's 2. I don't know. No, I don't know. 10 minus
no,
6.
it's 10
4
here,
a.m.
10 local. So for you all, I'm getting up at, 4 a.m.?
Yeah, that's not happening.
Yeah, but I'm normally up at 6 a.m., but it's just the body clock's all messed up right now. Just got back to my hotel here in suburban London. I was at Saints practice today. It's a little chilly here today, Jim. I got my fleece on. I'm too thin-blooded right now for this weather.
It's chilly in New Orleans. I mean,
that's what I heard.
I mean, it's really weird. I mean, I did a game last night. It was in the low 60s. Nice, cool breeze. Welcome this morning. It's in the 50s. Know what's going on. Jerry, hello. And join us for comments. If you got any comments or questions you want to ask Jeff Duncan or myself, or you just want to say who that, like Tara's doing here. Tara says who that, and we appreciate it. Jerry, we're going to jump into this question in just a minute. Before we talk about the Saints, Dunk, I wasn't going to talk about last night's game, but I do briefly want to talk. There's a huge controversy about Tua Tagovailoa last night getting injured, and the Dolphins lost to the Bengals last night. We had it on Best Bets. But a lot of players talking about how concussion protocols are in effect for a reason. And we saw him last week take that head injury. They called it a back injury. He goes in last night. I don't know if you saw the game or any of it.
So then he goes in. Saw the highlights.
Goes in against Cincinnati last night and takes a huge hit and just a major concussion, ends up going to the hospital. Players are upset because they say the concussion protocols are in there for a reason to protect the player from himself, if anything else. And they think that those protocols failed to Tagovailoa last night.
Yeah, and there's gonna be some major fallout from that, Jim. There's no doubt about it. I mean, it's a bad look for the Dolphins, bad look for the NFL, and I expect the league. I know they've already started an investigation. I expect them to come down pretty hard on this situation. It's not a good – I don't know what the protocol lapse was here because I know they had 2 different doctors clear him. So I don't understand exactly how that could happen. I'm not, a medical professional. But 2 different doctors clear him. I think the way they designated it as a back injury and when everyone could see it was clearly a concussion, there's something amiss there. And I'm sure the league's going to look over it now with a fine-tooth comb because they've got a major – PR crisis, not only publicly, but as you said, players. I mean, they've got a problem with the NFL Players Association now, and who knows? This could, end up resulting in some kind of lawsuit from the NFLPA or to his camp.
I couldn't agree more, and you just can't have that kind of thing again. These protocols are in effect to protect players, not just in the grand scheme of things, but to protect them from themselves. And every player is going to want to hop up and say, I'm okay. And, Rob Ninkovich was talking this morning on ESPN, and he's right. I mean, there's been times when, I've had a concussion. I've had multiple concussions, as a matter of fact, and one of them pretty severe. And, you jump up and you think you're okay. And then you realize about 20, 30 minutes later, you're not okay. And so it's nothing to play around with. It's things that linger. You have issues that happen later on and just can't have that. So hopefully Tua will be okay. We're hoping and praying for him. And hopefully the NFL can get this right. All right. We don't have a long show today because Dunk's got a lot of things to do in London. You got another show coming up for you at 10 o'clock. So we're going to get you out of here in about a half an hour, 35 minutes. So we're going to jump right into Saints Vikings. And we got a lot of questions already about different things. First, Jerry points out, and he is correct. For those in Louisiana, Mississippi, the game is on NFL Network, but you can also see it on WWL on Channel 4. The game will be on Sunday morning. So Doug Mouton told us about that a couple weeks ago. All games that are not able to be seen in a local market, games that are on ESPN, games that are on NFL Network, games that will be on Prime Video. They are able to be seen on a local channel. This time it is Channel 4, so you can see that. All right, so most of the questions are all about surrounding the same thing. And so we're just going to put this Facebook user. So it's someone on Facebook asks, is Jameis just throwing a pass for grabs? Wide receivers have to fight for balls. It's anyone's when he throws it up. But Jerry asked the question that most want to know, will the Saints offense finally wake up with Dalton starting? I don't know that we know for sure that Andy Dalton will be starting, Dunk, but I think it's looking more and more as we get there. Jameis Winston is now listed as doubtful, didn't practice again on Friday, but it's looking more and more like it'll be Andy Dalton on Sunday and not Jameis Winston.
Yeah, look, I think they're just playing the game right now. I mean, what I mean by the game, the strategy game of trying to keep Minnesota guessing. I'm sure Minnesota knows Andy Dalton's going to start. The fact that they let Andy Dalton speak to reporters today says a lot. You never really have the backup quarterback talk to the media. I think all signs are that he's going to start. I mean, for Jameis Winston to have missed 3 consecutive days of practice, that's all the game plan installation. There's really nothing left now. So it would be highly unlikely for him to start. They're just probably not designating him out just because they don't have to. And I'm sure on Sunday he'll be ruled out. But I just tweeted out earlier, pretty remarkable here. The further we get from the Drew Brees era, Jim, the more I think everyone starts to appreciate just how unbelievable and how rare it was. For 15 seasons, Drew only missed 12 games because of injury, and really only missed 1 game because of injury in the first 13 seasons. And the Saints had 5 starting quarterbacks total in those 15 years. They've now, Andy Dalton will be their 5th different starter the last 14 games. So that just shows you how rare that period was. And the Saints are learning right now, Saints fans, all of us, just how the other half in the NFL lives without an elite franchise quarterback.
I'm going to throw this out there because I know I'm in the minority when I say this. And I read your column. I know what you think. It's time for you. I think what you're saying is it's just time for a change. So whether Jameis Winston is injured or whatever, I mean, it is a perfect opportunity for Dennis Allen to take a chance. And if he was hesitant before to give Andy Dalton a shot because you don't want to pull your starting quarterback, that's one of the worst things you can do. And you certainly don't want to create a quarterback controversy in the middle of a season. And so it is a perfect opportunity for Dennis Allen to put Andy Dalton in the game. But for me, great. I mean, if Winston's hurt, by all means, you got to put Dalton in. But I don't think that Jameis has been the problem with the team, and I certainly don't think he was the problem this past Sunday. And I think there's a good chance that Andy Dalton comes in, the Saints could win this game, and then everyone will say, "See, all you need to do is put in Andy Dalton," and that won't be the case if that's what happens. But I would like to get your take on it and see where you stand. I'm just not with the social media experts who think that Jameis Winston is the reason why this team is losing.
Yeah, I think it's way more complicated, but he certainly has not played well the last 2 weeks, in part because of his physical limitations. I think the biggest thing that I've seen, I think the Saints coaches saw it, and that's why we're seeing this change, is he is not physically able, I think, to compete at the NFL level with his current condition. I mean, he's kind of a sitting duck back there, and teams are coming after him, and they're not afraid that he's going to run. He doesn't have much escape ability. I mean, he very much has lost all that athleticism that allowed him. I mean, remember last year, Jim, how I remember the opener against the Packers, him scrambling, not necessarily, or he's not a runner, but he's a scrambler. And he was able to convert a lot of third downs using his legs. I mean, that was a key part of his physical package was his running ability. And that's gone. And teams know it. So they're pinning their ears back, especially playing with a lead like they have the last few games. And it's just a recipe for disaster. They're having to pass, play 2-minute drill because they're falling behind. And you got a quarterback that can't move and really has lost some accuracy as well because of his back. they're going to be a much better situation with Andy Dalton at the quarterback. But like you said, they got to have other players play better. The offensive line's got to play better. The defense has got to play better. The special teams have been a letdown. So there's a lot of parts of this team that need to play better. But sometimes a new quarterback can spark a team. We'll see if Andy Dalton can do it.
That is most certainly true. That part of it I agree with 100%. I do think that new quarterbacks come in and spark a team. And I will say this team needs a spark because a big part of that problem, in my opinion, is they played with no heart, especially the past couple of weeks and last week, and especially they didn't show up in Charlotte. I mean, they had no business losing to that Panthers team. The Saints are so much better athletically and just talent-wise better than the Panthers. I mean, it's kind of embarrassing that they were down 13-0, and you could see when they finally started playing, they kind of started taking over a little bit, and then the defense was tired. And so I just – it's games like last week that are really frustrating more than anything.
Yeah, and I think one thing that'll be interesting to see is how the team rallies without Jameis Winston. I don't mean, rallying because he's not starting, but because they know so often when you have a new quarterback, everyone's kind of on edge. They know they've got to kind of pick their game up a little bit. And it often results – I wrote about this for Bayou Bets last week. Often the first-time backup quarterback starter, they have a high winning percentage a lot of times in the NFL because the rest of the team picks up their game. And there's not much game film. And now in this case, Andy Dalton, certainly there's plenty of game film for the Vikings. But oftentimes you get a little spike in production from other players in trying to compensate for the backup quarterback.
Well, I will say this. There's a reason why you went out and signed an Andy Dalton. After last year in the debacle and having Trevor Siemian and how bad he was and just a revolving door at quarterback and then hoping you had Taysom and now, there's a reason why Taysom is now the third-string quarterback. I mean, you didn't want to use him as your starter, and you were forced into that, and he was the best option for this team. And so now you're back to where – if Jameis can't go, you don't feel as forced to use him because you have a guy like Andy Dalton. And Dalton looked great in the preseason. So I think he's really good for this offense. We'll see what happens. But there's another problem. The wide receiver situation. Michael Thomas is out. I think I read this morning that he's certainly out. Like he's been listed as out.
Yes. Yeah, he's definitely been ruled out.
Okay, so now we're left with we don't know. What's the status with Jarvis Landry? Do you know?
Yeah, Landry's practiced last 2 days. He should be available.
Okay, Jarvis Landry is in there, and then what about Tre'Quan Smith?
He's limited, so we don't know full bore what he's going to do. But the rest of the receiving core, Marquez Callaway, Deontay Hardy should be back. He's been practicing this week, so I think they'll be okay at receiver. And it'll be interesting to see if Dalton has a little more production out of some other positions that have really kind of dropped off with Jameis Winston. And what I mean by that is like Adam Troutman at tight end, who's really struggled to even get a target. Will Dalton kind of having a different quarterback back there, will that open some things up for some other weapons on the Saints offense?
And Dalton has been known to throw to a tight end. So that's something he'll be looking for, whether it's, whoever it may be. Yeah, Juwan Johnson. And what's Taysom Hill's status?
Taysom Hill's fine. He's been the backup quarterback all week at practice. And then, the other guy that really has struggled with Winston, I don't know if that's a byproduct of the lack of playing, time on task together, but Alvin Kamara is not produced.
Kamara, yeah. And,
he's been practicing all week. Be interesting to see if Andy Dalton can kind of get him activated in the offense because, as you know, he's critical to this offense, especially without Mike Thomas. By far the best offensive weapon the Saints have is Kamara. And going against a Vikings team with Dalvin Cook and Justin Jefferson, they're going to have guys like Alvin Kamara step up.
Let me ask you about Alvin Kamara. I kind of talked about this in the preseason, and I was worried that all the things that are going on off the field could affect him personally and affect him going on the field. And I know he's been injured, so I don't want to blame it all on that. But he doesn't look right to me. And again, it could be just a product of the Saints have been behind and they haven't had a chance to use him like they'd want to use him and all those things. But now we see that his trial gets delayed until at least November. So, I mean, it's almost a certainty now that he will not be suspended this year, that is going to carry into 2023. But how much do you think that this could be affecting him? He doesn't talk a whole lot, so it's not like we can ask him, or it's not like he's going to talk about it. But do you get a sense at all that maybe these kinds of things could be lingering and could be bothering him on the field?
Well, I'll say this. Alvin Kamara, one thing about him is he pretty much wears his emotions on his sleeve. You get a quick read on how he's feeling just by watching him during a game. And I think that's what you're seeing, right? His body language pretty much tells the story. I think he's been frustrated at times this year. I think that's an issue for him. I mean, he's one of the leaders of the team, and I think he needs to display better body language when things aren't going well. That was a big thing for Sean Payton and Drew Brees, and we've seen a little more of that this year without them around. But I do think there's no doubt that he wants to produce at a higher level, and he's probably been frustrated with some of the injuries he's had the last couple of years. He missed games last year. All of a sudden this year he gets the rib injury and he's out again. He was incredibly durable his first 3-4 seasons in the league, and things are adding up. And that's what happens at that position. So right. I think having Dalton, the new quarterback in there, for whatever reason, I mean, yesterday Marquez Callaway talked about it. He said Andy Dalton throws a little bit. He used the word like doesn't throw as hard a pass as Jameis Winston. I don't think he ever used the word catchable, but in my opinion, like sometimes a guy like Dalton might throw a little bit more of a catchable ball. Maybe that's what can be the spark for a guy like Kamara, because we know he's such a weapon out of the backfield as a receiver.
Well, let's get into the matchup itself, because we're going to have to make a prediction before too long. Again, we're going to cut it short today. We usually go 45 minutes today. We're going to go 30, 35 minutes. Dunk's got some other obligations. Jeff Duncan is in London. I'm in Mandeville, and we are here on Dattitude, and we're glad you joined us. If you're new to the show, this is a regular podcast, Monday, Thursday, Friday. Friday is live, and then after it's over, I go and put it. You can find Dattitude wherever you find your other podcasts, and we're glad you joined us on this Friday morning. Now, I want to get into the matchup, because when I was going to look at the numbers, and I know it's only through 3 games, so it's a short sample, but I have to say, Dunk, I was surprised by some of these numbers. And the top 3 for both sides, I was super surprised. Look, I didn't think the Vikings had been playing that great at defense, but I didn't think they were 30th overall in total defense. They have not played very well defensively. So if Andy Dalton does come in and they can get anything going, you know, with all the hate on Jameis Winston, and I get that they were playing catch-up, so it may be skewed a little bit, but still, to be 8th in the NFL in passing offense, to me, and 8th in total offense, says a whole lot. So you got the 8th-ranked offense against 30th-ranked defense for the Vikings.
Well, yeah, but I mean, look, I think you hit on it. I mean, they've been playing catch-up. You know, that's a lot of those empty yards, in my opinion. The first 3 quarters have been pretty bleak for the offense, and they piled up a lot of yards after they've been behind. But Minnesota's played some very good teams so far. I mean, the Packers, the Eagles, the Lions are better offensively than people give them credit for. But it is surprising that they are ranked that low so far defensively, because they got some players on that side of the ball. But I do think there's an opportunity for this Saints offense to kind of get on track for the first time this year. I don't think they're going to have a big transition with Dalton. I mean, this is a guy that's been in a bunch of different offensive systems. He's a veteran guy. We saw him in the preseason. He's got a good grasp of this offense. And I think he's kind of a perfect fit in a lot of ways, because he makes quick reads, gets the ball out quick, and we all know that's what Drew Brees was maybe the best quarterback ever at. And that's the kind of guy that I think fits what Pete Carmichael wants in this system.
Still, you have to find a way to exploit this Vikings defense. And I think, you know, the biggest difference, who is best against the Vikings thus far? Well, I mean, I guess you have to look at the victory, the lone loss that the Vikings have given up, and that was the Philadelphia Eagles. Jalen Hurts is going to beat a lot of people because he's massively improved, and they have A.J. Brown. So I think that for the Saints to be effective this week, they don't have a quarterback that can move around like Jalen Hurts, but they certainly have weapons. So we go back to talking about Alvin Kamara. I think Alvin Kamara has to be a key in this game, because to me, to attack this Vikings defense, you do it with speed. And who's your fastest guy on the field? It's Alvin Kamara.
Yeah, look, the Saints have actually run the ball pretty darn well. They just haven't run it very often because they've been playing
because they've been behind, right?
Yeah, they're averaging 5.5 yards a carry. I mean, that's incredible. So that's a good sign. I know a lot of that really it's still skewed a little bit from the Taysom Hill opening game where he had a lot of yards, 57-yard run. But they still have been pretty productive on the ground with Kamara and Ingram. They've coughed the ball up too much. There's no doubt about that. That's where it all starts, Jim, with this team offensively. They got to eliminate turnovers, and they got to eliminate these self-inflicted penalties that have caused them to be in these long down and distance situations that have short-circuited drives. To me, that's very uncharacteristic. And, I talked to Deuce McAllister last night about it. There's more going on here with the lack of offensive production at quarterback than just, the passing game. We all see the passing at the quarterback position. And that's what we kind of base everything on. But there's just a management issue going on right now. And I think Jameis Winston has to take a lot of the responsibility of that. All these offensive penalties, these pre-snap penalties, the sacks they give up, a lot of that's on the quarterback. It's not just the offensive line pass protection. The quarterback makes a lot of these reads and checks and has to know where to go with the ball. And I just think they've been out of kilter because of that. Now, whether it's because he's so worried about his back and he's having these issues, but Deuce made a good point of saying last night that of these sacks and problems they've had, only 3, he said, are credited to the offensive line. So that should tell you it's either the backs or the quarterback or maybe the tight ends that are leading to some of these issues.
Or the back's back. I mean, that'd be funny, but, the quarterback's back. I mean, that's what we've been talking about for the past 3 weeks. Going back, we haven't really spent a lot of time talking about the defense. And you talk about skewed numbers. I mean, the Saints have done well against the pass and they really have. They kind of did okay against Mariota, but they stuffed Brady, and then they stuffed Baker Mayfield. That fifth-ranked passing defense, I think, has a chance to get even better than that. Their rushing defense is also kind of skewed. Mariota was able to run around a little bit. Fournette didn't really do anything. And McCaffrey, as they was trying to salt away the clock last week. So I think this overall 13th ranked defense, I think that number is skewed away from the Saints, where the offensive number is skewed in their favor. The defensive number maybe not skewed in the opposite direction. But, you want to talk about skewed. Don't get fooled by those offensive numbers for the Vikings. They had a bad game against Philadelphia. But we've talked about it, Dunk. They have some of the best offensive weapons in the NFL. Dalvin Cook, and if he gets hurt, Alexander Madison's pretty darn good. Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen, go down the line. Irv Smith, who went to Brother Martin. And then you talk about KJ Osborne, even their third receiver. They are stacked.
Yeah, this will be the biggest test of the Saints Saints secondary for sure. Kirk Cousins is a streaky quarterback. He has games where he looks like a Pro Bowler, and in games like we saw against the Eagles where he just really struggles. Which one you're going to get, the Saints will find out on Sunday. But if they allow him to get comfortable, he's not particularly mobile. He can move around a little bit, but he's not going to be, Baker Mayfield or Marcus Mariota. So I do think they can get after him a little more. And but if they allow him to get into a rhythm with those weapons on the outside, I think some of the Saints' numbers also have been skewed in the pass defense just because, Brady wasn't even trying to throw the ball down the field. He was managing that game, as a quarterback because of the limitations of the receiving core and their offensive line with the injuries. He pretty much was almost willing to concede third downs to punting the ball as opposed to trying to get those first downs. He wanted to stay out of negative plays. So everything's a little skewed. Baker Mayfield and Mariota were playing with leads. They weren't going to put the ball into harm's way downfield. So we'll find out more, I think, about this secondary and this pass rush in this game because so far they've both been kind of muted.
The Saints lead the league in having the most crushed tablets against them. So Tom Brady has been told by the NFL, stop ruining our tablets. And there's a rule now. There's a Brady rule. You can no longer smash tablets on the sideline or you get fined exponentially. So I'm sure he doesn't care about that. We're going to get to our prediction. So now is the time if you want to comment your prediction, no matter where you're watching, whether you're watching on Facebook or Twitter. I have my Twitter feed up. If you have YouTube, if you're on YouTube, now's the time you can give your own prediction. We'll put it on the screen. Duncan and I are going to do that. Before we start with our predictions, I want to make an announcement. We're going to have a special show next Friday. It'll be the 100th episode of Dattitude. And as a kind of celebration, we're going to have a Duncan Holder reunion that I'm excited about. It's going to be,
Nice.
The Duncan Holder show for quite a few years. We had a lot of fun with it. And you guys were nice enough to let me come on a few times. I was the guest fill-in. We also had Clyde Verdun, who was on the side, kind of the sidekick, and he was great. And so all four of us are going to be together again next Friday. So maybe we'll do a little bit longer show than normal. Maybe we'll take the 10 or 15 minutes we didn't use today, and we'll use it next Friday. But I think it's going to be a lot of fun, Dunk.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. We really had a good time doing that show for a number of years, and look forward to seeing, as we called him, Clydico. That was our nickname for him.
Well, he is a hoot. And last Friday when Jim Rapier and I were doing our high school game, we bumped into him, and he was working for the Advocate, and so we ended up going to have dinner after our game, and had a lot of fun just kind of reminiscing and catching up. So Clyde's going to come on the show, and I'll make sure I have a lot of roast for Mr. Holder.
You know, it was fun last night, Jim, as we ran into Nakia Hogan, former colleague.
Oh, really? I haven't heard that name in forever.
Nakia came to the event, of course, former Times-Picayune Saints reporter, and we saw him over here in London with some of his friends. They made the trip over, so it was great catching back up with Nakia.
I haven't seen or talked to him in probably a decade. All right, it's time for that time of the show where we give our predictions. We already have a couple. Christopher Butler, he says 27-14, but that doesn't tell me anything. I don't know whether you mean the Saints or Vikings. So I'm assuming, since you don't put anything, that you mean that the Saints are going to win. We know Jerry thinks the Saints are going to win. Let me just tell you something. If Jerry ever says the Saints are going to lose, they're done. Okay, I mean they're like done. So if Jerry predicts the Saints to lose, this team is going to fall off of a cliff. I mean, so we can just stop covering. Kim Tran says who that. All right, it's time to get into our picks segment. I will throw the numbers up on the board. Dunk, the Saints at 1-2 are a 2.5-point underdog in a neutral site game. Money line plus 118. That means if you bet $100 on the Saints and they win straight up, you get $118. Conversely, for the Vikings, they are 2.5-point favorites. You have to lay a little juice, actually. They're at 2.5 at minus 115. So you get about 115 to win 100 at minus 2.5. Their money line is 140. Overall total, the over-under is 43.5. What do you see happening on Sunday at Tottenham Stadium?
Well, I think the Saints are a desperate team, and when you have a desperate team, sometimes that's the difference in winning. I think that happened last week for the Saints against Carolina. They just were the hungrier team, and you could see it on the field. And I think that'll be the case on Sunday. I mean, I think they might get a defensive score out of this game. They really, as good as their defense has played, they have not really taken the ball away. They still don't have an interception. I think that will end on Sunday. They get some short fields to work with. I think this game could go over, Jim. And I know, the Saints have been a good under bet so far. But I would take the Saints and those points. You could take them on the money line. I know it's probably not that big because of the low spread, but I'll go 23-21 Saints.
You and I are on a similar page. Monday on Dattitude, Derry Downer returned. I was pretty ticked off. Not so much because they lost. I was ticked off because they didn't show up. And so, I said that I was ready to say that they were going to get their ass kicked and this season's basically over. Well, I haven't necessarily changed my mind as far as the grand picture of things, but I will say this. If the Saints don't show up on Sunday, then they're not going to show up. I mean, you don't go on a plane ride together. You fly across the country. You're wearing your black helmets that everybody's been talking about, the color rush jerseys. They're making a big deal about it. You don't do all that, and if you still don't show up after that, you're probably going to have Andy Dalton, then you're not going to show up. So with that being said, these guys are professionals. I think they have a lot of pride. I think they have a lot of talent that they've been wasting. And I do think they're going to show up. So it's now or never. And not only that, every Aunt Mabel and Drunk Joe that's not wearing black and gold thinks the Vikings are going to kill the Saints this week. So the fact that the public is all over the Vikings is enough for me to take the Saints. And I actually think it's enough to bet on. I think the Saints are going to win. I agree with it, that it's going to go over. I think it's going to go way over. Actually, I think the Saints are going to score like 30 points. My prediction is Saints 30, Vikings 20, we'll say 26. I forget what I put in my column, something like that. But I think the Saints play well, and I think that they find a way to make it so where they're winning most of the game, and it's unlike a lot of the past games, Dunk, where they've had to play catch up and had to eke it out. So we'll see. We'll see if Duncan and I are both right. We've both been on the same side. I think this is 4 games. The only difference is the first game, I think you predicted the Saints would cover, and I said they didn't otherwise. But we've said the Saints were going to win 4 weeks in a row now. So I guess something's got to give, right?
Yeah, at some point we got to stop being homers.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't. For me, I'm like I said, I've been called Derry Downer enough. I'm not being a homer. They're just calling them as I think it. And when I went through my analysis I spend all of Wednesday, part of Tuesday on my off day, and all of Wednesday going through analysis. And analysis says the Saints can win this game, and actually, I kind of think should win this game. So if they can even limit Kirk Cousins and find a way to stop Justin Jefferson and Dalvin Cook, got to remember, he's a little banged up too. So we'll see how effective he is. All right, before I let you go, Duncan, I know you got something else to do. I want to spend 30 seconds on LSU and 30 seconds on Tulane. LSU going to the Plains, an 8-point favorite over Auburn. Seems like a lot of points to me.
Agree with you. Very difficult place to play. The first road game, real road game for LSU this year. That's always, in my opinion, a good betting angle. Take the home team in that situation on a team. Let's face it, this is almost like a 50-50 game, even though I think Auburn's down, and I like the way LSU's trending. Too many points, though, for an Auburn team that's going to have a home field advantage and be a little desperate because they've not gotten off to the greatest start.
I agree with you. I think LSU wins, but I think it's tight. I wouldn't touch this game with a stick, but I think that Auburn is going to cover, even though LSU is clearly, and I mean clearly, a better team than Auburn. But that doesn't always translate when you talk to betting lines. Lastly, I think Tulane rebounds against Houston. I know that Houston is a 2.5-point favorite. The Green Wave have struggled with Houston in the past, but on a short week, Dunk, no time to think about the woes and the laments about all the things you let slip away last Saturday against Southern Miss at Yulman Stadium.
Yeah, look, we kind of called that a little bit. I didn't think they'd lose the game, but 14-point favorite, that was way too much. That was a good example of a game where where Southern Miss caught Tulane at the perfect time. We talked about it. Between the big upset against Kansas State, looking ahead potentially to Houston, and you get them in the old sandwich game. But I agree, Tulane will bounce back. I still think this is a difficult game, though. That's a difficult place to play in that new stadium. Houston's got, I think it's a 3 or 4 year old stadium. So I'm going to go with Houston. Houston's talented. They've got a ton of talent. They're just up and down. You never know which Houston team you're going to get. And I think, unfortunately for Tulane, they're going to get the good Houston this week.
We'll find out whether you're right or not. Tulane plays tonight. I believe it is on ESPN, a Friday night game. And it's my only Friday night off of the entire prep season, so I may stay home and watch it. We'll see. But that is going to do it for Dunk and I. Dunk's got some other obligations going on in London. He is Jeff Duncan in London. I am Jim Derry in Mandeville. Dunk, we're going to have a lot of fun next week with the Duncan Holder reunion, and I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, bud. We'll talk then. Hopefully my body clock will be adjusted on the New Orleans time once we get back.
All right, we'll see what happens when it comes to Saints Vikings on London, and we'll see you on Monday for Dattitude. Again, Duncan and I live with the Duncan Holder reunion for episode number 100 next Friday. Make sure to join us on all the same stations